Hey y'all, it's Sade Imori, your favorite expat with nomadic tendencies. Welcome back. Today I'm at the Pharaonic village. I've never been here before and I'm super excited about it. I just learned that we can get a discount for having our residency cards. I apologize for the sun. You know, it works in your favor, but sometimes it works against you as well, especially when you're trying to record. So we're about to get some of this sightseeing in, take a ferry, and enjoy the scene. All right, so once you come through the gate, you run into a security guard. We're residents, so our driver had to ask them if we would be able to use our residency cards, and he took them, checked them, and said yes. Once we parked, we came to the ticket area to purchase our tickets. So there was, I think, a 10% discount for the child, and we ended up paying $19.60. So this is what it looks like after you make your payment. Hi.
Mommy,
Yeah.
that's water.
Yeah.
Mommy, Mommy.
Water's £10. I have water.
You got water, Pete? No. I got water. I don't have one.
All right, y'all. So once you get into, I would call it like a little lounge area or restaurant area, you'll wait a couple of minutes. If you'd like to purchase some snacks, the chips were £10. I think the water was £10, but the Pringles were either, I think I heard him say £30. I just picked up a bag of chips, and I already had me some water, so I didn't purchase any water. Once you do that, someone will come and get you, and when they come and get you, they'll walk you through a door to the ferry.
This was the inspiration of Dr. Hassan Regev, who wanted to recreate an ancient Egyptian village on the banks of the Nile with as authentic an environment as possible. The village is surrounded by an extensive papyrus plantation, which not only reproduces the ancient surroundings, but also, along with the hundreds of trees which were planted around the village, provides an effective screen to isolate this glimpse of Egypt's ancient past from sights and sounds of modern life. The Pharaonic village covers an area of 32 acre subjects as mummification, ancient boats, the Coptic and Islamic periods, and the life of President Nasser. Dr. Abdus-Salam has made the Pharaonic village into an open book on Egyptian history and culture. You are about to take a voyage back in time to the land of the pharaohs 4,000 years ago. Between the trees is a statue of the Roman god Nilos, the personification of the river Nile. Nilos rests his arm on a sphinx, symbol of Egypt's great antiquity, and is attended by crocodiles which were found in the Nile in ancient times. The plant growing in the water here is papyrus, which was used by the ancient Egyptians for making paper. The modern name actually comes from the name of the plant. Papyrus grew abundantly in Egypt in Pharaonic times. The papyrus plant was the symbol of Lower Egypt, the northern part of the country, while the lotus flower, Osiris, the god of resurrection and lord of eternity, was usually shown as a mummy, his flesh colored green or black. According to the legend of Osiris, he was a king of Egypt who was foully murdered by his brother Set. The wife of Osiris has her son Horus on her knee. Isis was worshipped all over Egypt as a mother goddess who typified the faithful wife and devoted mother. Isis and Osiris, who avenged his father's death by fighting with his uncle Seth for the throne of Egypt. Akhenaten elevated the Aten, the disk of the sun, to be the state god of Egypt in a form of monotheism. At the same time, he introduced a dramatic change of art style and built a new capital city in Middle Egypt. Akhenaten's beautiful wife, Queen Nefertiti, was a keen supporter of the cult of the Aten. After Akhenaten's death, the Egyptians returned to the old form. The battle was indecisive, both sides claiming victory, but it is certain that Ramesses' personal courage saved the Egyptians from defeat. 16 years later, the king signed a peace treaty with the Hittite leader Hattusilis II, which was the first recorded peace treaty in world history. The most famous of Ramesses II's monuments is the great temple at Abu Simbel in Nubia, south of Aswan. This magnificent building, with its famous colossal statues of the king, was cut entirely in the rock, along with the nearby temple of Ramesses' favorite queen, Nefertari. The two temples were rescued from the waters of Lake Nasser when the Aswan High Dam was being built in the 1960s. This scene shows the discovery of the child Moses, whose mother had put him in a basket and floated it on the Nile to prevent him from being killed by Pharaoh's soldiers. The child was discovered by a member of Pharaoh's family and was brought up in the royal palace. Eventually, he became a prophet who led his own people, the Hebrews, out of Egypt. Protect people against snakes and scorpions, and was particularly regarded as a patron of women in childbirth. In general, Best was the god of pleasure and enjoyment of every kind. Now life in ancient Egypt comes alive with scenes of agriculture and industry. The nobleman and his wife are enjoying the fresh air in their garden pavilion. They are playing a game called Senet, a game for two players, a form of which is still played in Egypt today. Ploughing is the first operation in preparing the land for cultivation, and here we see the ploughman with his team and the simple wooden plough. After ploughing, the heavy clods of soil are broken up with a hoe, and then furrows are made with the broad-bladed mattock. The sower scatters the seed from a small bag or basket, and sheep follow the sower to press the seed into the tough soil with their feet. Beside the houses in the background are pigeon towers. The Egyptians kept pigeons for food, and they were used for carrying messages, especially for the army. The fields are irrigated by means of the shadoof, which works like a balance, with a bucket at one end of the long pole and a heavy stone as a counterweight. Shadoofs are still sometimes used in the Egyptian countryside. When the grain is harvested, the sheaves are carried to the threshing floor in a net bag hung on a long pole. When a thick layer of grain has been spread on the circular floor, oxen or cows are driven round to break up the ears of grain with their heavy feet. The next process is winnowing, when the grain is tossed up into the air so that the lighter chaff or husk will blow away on the wind. The grain is then taken to be stored in the silos. The scribe makes a careful record of all the grain which is being stored. This was important for taxation purposes, as there was no money in Egypt in Pharaonic times. Honey was used for sweetening by the ancient Egyptians. Watery tubes piled up in rows, and in some parts of the country, beehives are still made this way today. The River Nile was the main highway of communication in Pharaonic times, so boat building was an important industry. Small boats were made of bundles of papyrus tied together with ropes. Such boats were used for short journeys and for fishing or hunting trips. Larger boats were made of wood, usually cedar wood imported from Lebanon. Wooden boats were pegged together with dowels and sewn together with ropes, as can be seen in the cross-section on the bank. When the boat was put into the water, the wood expanded and the rope shrank. Trunk was used in house building, and the branches provided fronds for making mats and baskets, while furniture and boxes were made from the ribs. The boxes were used for storage and as cages for small animals and birds. The Egyptians today still use the various parts of the palm tree for the same purposes. There were many different kinds of fish in the Nile and its canals which made good food, and fishing was also popular as a sport. One method of fishing can be seen here, where a net is stretched between two boats, and the fisherman hits the water with a stick to frighten the fish into the net. Let's see if he's been lucky today. There are demonstrations of some industries and crafts, the first of which is brickmaking. The material used is the Nile mud, which is mixed with water and chopped straw into a thick paste. This paste is put into a wooden mould, and the bricks are then simply left to dry in the sun. As there is little heavy rain in Egypt, these mud bricks can last for centuries. The houses of the ancient Egyptians, even the palaces of the pharaohs, were constructed of sun-dried mud brick. The roof was made of split palm trunks covered with branches. The building was covered with a thick layer of mud, which acted as insulation against heat, wind, and rain. Glassmaking was introduced into Egypt after the military campaigns of Thutmose III about 1450 BC, when captive glassmakers were brought here from Syria. Glass was used for making beads, inlays, amulets, and small vessels, which were formed around a core, as glass blowing was not invented until the 1st century BC. In Ptolemaic times, Alexandria became a center of glass craftsmanship, and in the Roman period, fine cameos were produced in the same city. Mummification is basically dehydration, and to speed up this process, the internal organs of the body were removed and preserved separately. The body was dried out by being covered with natron salt. Pottery making is one of the oldest crafts in Egypt, dating back to about 6000 BC. The clay is kneaded with water and mixed with ground potsherds or chopped straw, which helps the finished pot to dry evenly without cracking. The potter forms the pot with his fingers as he kicks the wheel round with his foot. The handles are added afterwards, and the pot is dried in the sun for a while before being fired. This scene shows the different stages in decorating a stone wall. First of all, the surface is leveled, then smoothed and polished with a piece of hard stone. Grid lines are marked in red on the prepared surface to ensure accurate enlargements of the original drawings. The artist copies the outline onto the wall, working from the sketch made by the chief artist on a small slab of stone or a piece of papyrus. Then the sculptor carves the design in relief with his mallet and chisel. Finally, the details would be painted in color to make the picture look as realistic as possible. Statues were partially carved in the quarry where the stone for them was cut. First of all, the block of stone is separated from the rock face by hammering wooden wedges into holes cut in the rock. The wedges are soaked with water, and as the wood expands, the block breaks away. Vases were made from various kinds of stone, particularly alabaster, a soft stone which was worked into beautiful designs. After the rough piece of alabaster has been polished smooth, the inside is hollowed out with a drill with a flint or copper bit. The vase is sunk into the ground to prevent cracking during drilling. Alabaster vases were used as lamps and for storing perfumes and precious oil. The tools of the carpenter and joiner were made of copper, wood and bronze. On the left, a man is sawing a log of wood into planks. Other tools used were a hammer, chisel, an adze and a bow drill for boring holes. It was important to the pharaohs that the army was well equipped at all times. Weapons included bows and arrows, swords, battle axes and spears, as well as shields and throw sticks. The horse-drawn war chariot was introduced into Egypt by the Hyksos from Western Asia around 1700 BC. Perfumes were very popular in ancient Egypt and consisted chiefly of fragrant oils and fats. The juice is extracted from sweet-smelling flowers in a bag of heavy canvas, the ends of which are twisted in opposite directions with wooden bars. This scented extract is then mixed with oil or fat as a base. Linen made from the flax plant was used by the Egyptians for clothing and many other purposes. Bundles of flax stalks are pulled through a large wooden comb to remove the tops and leaves. The stalks are soaked in water for a few days to soften them and then beaten with a wooden mallet. They are then pulled through a smaller comb to separate the fibers from the outer woody covering, and the good fibers are picked out and spun into thread on a spindle. The fine linen thread is then woven into cloth on a loom. The earliest looms in Egypt were horizontal, and the upright loom was brought to this country by the Hyksos. Another important industry was papyrus paper making, for which the government had the monopoly. The lowest part of the stem is the best part for paper making. The outer green rind is peeled off and the white pith is sliced into thin strips which are soaked in water. After repeated soaking, the now pliable strips are placed on a piece of cloth in two layers, one vertical and one horizontal. The surface of the sheet thus formed is then hammered with a wooden mallet to cause the fibers of the two layers to stick together. The sheet is then covered with another piece of cloth and pressed between two heavy stones for several days. During that time it also dries out in the hot sun and the piece of paper is ready for use. Good wine was appreciated in Pharaonic times, and this scene shows the method of winemaking. Bunches of ripe grapes are taken to the vat where the grapes are trodden out, and the juice extracted is poured into large pottery jars to ferment. When this process is complete, the jars are sealed with a clay seal, which is stamped with the date and the name of the vineyard where the grapes were grown.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the religion, the ancient Egyptian religion. The ancient Egyptian used to worship the goddess of Horus, the statue. It wasn't just for the autumn to go dress. And the pool decorated with 11 points. Between all of them, 12 will stay, the first 12 hours per day. This is the man we see outside. We give some offerings to God. Intermediates with the names of the famous kings. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great invaded Egypt with a new period. It's called Pharaonic period. You know about the hieroglyphics? Anyone know about the hieroglyphics? How can we read the signs or the letters? The hieroglyphics translated for the first time by a Frenchman called François Champollion before 200 years ago. Before 200 years ago, no one knows any translation. Enter the house from inside to see, and then we'll go to the presence of the poor people. So the rich man's house, like a garden, look at garden, and the garden is motherhood, and this is another called grapes, and carried by culture. At the back of the house, some other rooms we see. Only two ovens used. This is for baking bread, another one for cooking. This is the two ovens used by the ancient Egyptians 3,000 years ago inside their houses. And the last one here is the stable of the horse's room. It will be at the end of the house. To look for the way to get the bad smell out of the house. On the left hand, we have two barrels of fire to make a fire. When you go to the new museum for civilization, there's some of these tools that used by the ancient Egyptians 3,000 years ago inside their houses to get the fire. So the man, he used to put some leaves and little oil and just moving his hand for a long time to get the fire. And now we're going to see with the man. Just go a little bit away because the man, he will make it by using the, there's not the real material by the way, just we'll put in matches or something like that. just to save the time, we'll put something like on a bottom just to be in a minute. And now we'll see with the man how the ancient Egyptian used to make fire 3,000 years ago inside their house.
Mommy, make fire.
And then he used to get the fire from here by using the same leaves to the oven inside the house for baking bread or making cooking. Some tools of them in the new museum for civilization. He used to get the fire from here by using the same leaves to the oven inside the house with some leaves inside just for making baking bread or baking. Now we're on the sunset, so most of them closed. I mean, we had three colors, white, yellow, and purple. So you can see the white and yellow is closed, but the purple one is still open. In a minute it will close and wait for the sun to come back again to open. We'll talk about the ancient Egyptian and the sun of resurrection.
Mommy,
Huh?
what about the elephant?
What about the elephant?
Can I rub him?
You can't rub him.
The elephant.
Want the people to know that this was amazing. It really was absolutely amazing, and it was worth every Egyptian pound, US dollar, every bit of it. And we actually ended the tour early, so I would advise everybody who wants to know about the ancient Egyptian way to do this tour. Come to the Pharaonic village.